The key felt heavy in my palm, its brass surface gleaming under the reception hall lights. Patricia, my new mother-in-law, beamed at us with an enthusiasm that seemed slightly forced. "Consider it my wedding gift to you both," she said, pressing the key into my hand. "The house is yours now. I'm starting fresh in Florida." My husband Michael stared at his mother. "What? You're moving? When were you going to tell me?" "I'm telling you now, darling." She smoothed her silk dress, avoiding his eyes. "The papers are already signed on my new condo. I leave tomorrow morning." Tomorrow, our wedding day, and she drops this bomb. But that was Patricia Chin, always doing things her own way. Consequences be damned. "Mom, this is crazy. The house has been in our family for generations. And now it's yours." She smiled that enigmatic smile I'd never quite trusted. "Just be careful in the attic. Some things are better left undisturbed." Before either of us could respond, she disappeared into the crowd of wedding guests, leaving us holding a key and more questions than answers. "Well," I said, trying to lighten the mood, "at least we don't have to house hunt." Michael didn't laugh. He was still staring after his mother, his face troubled. "Something's not right, Sarah. She's been acting strange ever since we got engaged." He wasn't wrong. Patricia had always been difficult, polite but distant with me, protective of Michael to the point of possessiveness. But lately, she'd been different, distracted, almost nervous. "Let's check out the house tomorrow," I suggested, "after she leaves." Michael nodded slowly. "Yeah, maybe we'll find some answers there." We should have known it wouldn't be that simple. Nothing with Patricia ever was. The next morning, we pulled up to the familiar Victorian house where Michael had grown up. It stood 3 stories tall, its gray-blue paint weathered, but elegant, wraparound porch still graceful despite needing repairs. I'd always loved this house, even if Patricia's presence had made visits somewhat tense. "Her card's gone," Michael noted, pulling into the driveway. "She really did leave." The house key slid into the lock smoothly, but something felt off the moment we stepped inside. The furniture was gone. All of it. The antique tables, the Persian rugs, the oil paintings that had hung on these walls for decades. Even the curtains had been removed, leaving empty windows staring at us like vacant eyes. "What the hell?" Michael moved from room to room, his footsteps echoing. "She took everything." Not quite everything, I realized, following him. The built-in bookshelves in the study still held their volumes. The kitchen cabinets contained dishes and cookware, but anything valuable, anything personal, had vanished. "Look," I called from the dining room. A single envelope lay on the built-in buffet, Michael's name written in Patricia's elegant hand. He ripped it open, reading aloud. "Dearest Michael, by now you've discovered the house is empty. I've donated most of the furniture to charity. You and Sarah will want to make the space your own anyway. Everything important is safely in Florida with me. The house is yours, free and clear. The deed is being sent to your lawyer. Please don't try to contact me for a while. I need time. All my love, Mom." "Time for what?" Michael crumpled the letter. "What is she running from?" I had no answer. We spent the next hour exploring the house, finding more questions than answers. Every closet emptied, every drawer cleared. Even Michael's childhood bedroom had been stripped bare. Then we reached the attic door. "Be careful in the attic." I remembered Patricia's warning. Some things are better left undisturbed. Michael's jaw tightened. I'm tired of her cryptic games. He pulled the cord, and the attic stairs creaked down. The space was mostly empty, dust motes dancing in the light from the small window. A few boxes remained, labeled in faded marker. Christmas decorations, old papers, family photos. And there, in the far corner, a small wooden chest I'd never seen before. "That's new," Michael said, frowning, "or old, but I'd never seen it before." We approached together, leather shoes leaving prints in the dust. The chest was made of dark wood, intricate carvings decorating its surface. No lock, just a simple brass latch. Inside, we found only one item: a leather-bound diary, its pages yellow with age. June 15, 1992. I read from the first page. "Today, I made a choice that will haunt me forever, but I had no choice. The truth would destroy everything." Michael's face went pale. "That's the year I was born." My hands trembled as I turned the page, reading further. "The baby isn't his. George can never know. He's so happy, already planning the nursery, picking out names. How can I tell him that one mistake, one night of weakness, means the child he's so excited about isn't actually his? I'll take this secret to my grave. No one can ever know that Michael's real father is..." "Stop." Michael's voice cracked. "I can't. I need air." He stumbled toward the attic stairs, leaving me holding the diary that had just shattered his world. George Chen had died when Michael was 12, a heart attack at his law office. He'd been, by all accounts, a devoted father who doted on his only son. Michael had grown up believing he was exactly like his father. Same analytical mind, same dedication to justice that had led him to become a prosecutor. But if the diary was true, I followed Michael downstairs, found him sitting on the porch steps, head in his hands. "It could be a fake," I offered. "Some kind of bizarre mind game." He laughed bitterly. "You know my mother. She doesn't do anything without a reason." He looked up at me, eyes red. All these years, everything I thought I knew about myself. I sat beside him, taking his hand. "This doesn't change who you are." "Doesn't it? My whole life, I've tried to live up to my father's legacy, to make him proud. And now you're still the same person you were yesterday. The same man I married. The same dedicated prosecutor who fights for justice." He squeezed my hand but said nothing. Back in the attic, I read more of the diary while Michael paced the dusty floors. Patricia's words painted a picture of a troubled marriage, a moment of weakness with a colleague, the devastating realization of pregnancy. She'd convinced herself telling the truth would destroy her family, so she buried it deep. But there was more. August 3, 1992. Robert keeps calling. Says he has a right to know about his child. I've told him to stay away, that the baby is George's, but he won't listen. Says he'll tell George himself if I don't. I'm terrified. "Robert?" Michael stopped pacing. "Robert who?" I turned more pages, scanning entries. "Wait. Here. September 1992. Robert Matthews finally agreed to stay away. The money helped, nearly emptied my trust fund, but it was worth it to protect my family. He signed papers giving up any claim to the baby." "Matthews?" Michael's face went even paler. Not Judge Robert Matthews?" I looked up sharply. "The one you clerked for after law school." He nodded slowly. He took a special interest in my career. Mentored me. Said he saw something of himself in me. His laugh was hollow. "I guess now I know why." The pieces were falling into place. Patricia's increasing anxiety as Michael's career brought him into contact with Judge Matthews. Her sudden decision to leave town just as Matthews was retiring and moving back to the area. "There's more," I said quietly, still reading. "She writes about watching you and Judge Matthews together during your clerkship. How guilty she felt seeing the connection between you, knowing she was the only one who understood why." "Stop." Michael's voice was raw. "I can't. I need to process this." We left the diary in the attic, locked up the empty house, and drove home in silence. What should have been our first day as newlyweds instead felt heavy with secrets and lies. That evening, as we sat in our apartment surrounded by wedding gifts we hadn't opened yet, Michael finally spoke. "I'm going to confront her." I looked up from the thank you note I'd been pretending to write. "Are you sure?" "I need answers. Real ones. Not just what's in that diary." He pulled out his phone. "Her new address has to be on the deed paperwork, right?" "Michael, wait." I covered his hand with mine. "Maybe we should take some time. Think this through. I've had a lifetime of lies. I'm done waiting." But when he called his lawyer, we hit our first obstacle. The deed hadn't been filed yet. No paperwork had been submitted at all. "What do you mean, no paperwork?" Michael demanded. "She said it was all handled." More calls followed. Patricia's phone was disconnected. The realtor who'd supposedly handled her Florida condo purchase didn't exist. Every lead we followed evaporated like smoke. "She's running," Michael realized. But from what? Or who? I thought about the diary entries, the mentions of Robert Matthews, the timing of everything. "When does Judge Matthews officially retire?" I asked. "Next week. There's a big retirement party." Michael's eyes widened. "You think she's afraid he'll finally tell the truth? Or that you'll figure it out yourself, now that you'll be seeing more of him socially instead of just professionally?" Michael was already reaching for his keys. "We need to talk to him. Now. It's almost midnight." "I don't care. I need answers." I couldn't argue with the desperation in his voice. Within minutes, we were in the car, heading toward the affluent suburb where Judge Robert Matthews lived. The house was dark when we arrived, no cars in the circular driveway. "Maybe this isn't such a good idea," I started to say, but Michael was already out of the car, striding toward the front door. Before he could ring the bell, a voice called from the darkness. "I wondered when you'd come." We both spun around. Judge Matthews stepped out of the shadows by the garage, still wearing his court suit despite the late hour. "Your mother called," he said quietly. "Told me about the diary." Michael's hands clenched into fists. "So it's true?" The judge nodded slowly. "You can see it, can't you? The resemblance? Everyone always said you looked just like George. But," he gestured to his own face, "the same strong jaw, the same deep-set eyes that I suddenly realized Michael shared. Why didn't you ever tell me? Your mother made me promise. Said it would destroy your relationship with George, with the whole Chen family. And she was right. George was a better father than I could have been. That wasn't your choice to make." Michael's voice shook with anger. "Either of you." "No," Matthews agreed. "It wasn't. But we thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me? By lying to me my entire life." A car turned onto the street, headlights sweeping across us. Matthews stepped back into the shadows. "Not here," he said urgently. "Come inside. There's more you need to know." We followed him into the house, into a study lined with law books and framed photographs. And there, on his desk, sat an identical diary to the one we'd found in Patricia's attic. She wasn't the only one who kept records. Matthews said quietly, "Sit down, Michael. This is going to be a long night." Judge Matthews pulled his own diary from the desk drawer, its leather binding worn with age. "Before I show you this, you need to understand something. Your mother isn't just running from the truth about your parentage. She's running from something much worse." Michael sat rigid in the leather armchair, his face a mask of controlled emotion. "What could be worse than lying to me my entire life?" Matthews sighed heavily. "The night you were conceived, it wasn't just a simple affair. Your mother came to my office late one evening, distraught. George had discovered some discrepancies in the family trust accounts. Money missing, unexplained transfers. He was planning to launch an investigation." "What does this have to do with anything?" Michael demanded. "Everything." Matthews opened his diary. "Your mother was embezzling from the family trust. Had been for years, covering her tracks with fake investments, doctored statements. George was close to discovering it all. She came to me for legal advice. One thing led to another." He shook his head. "But that's not the worst part." I reached for Michael's hand, felt it trembling in mine. "When George confronted her about the missing money," Matthews continued, "she panicked. Told him she'd discovered one of his law partners was stealing from client accounts, that she'd been gathering evidence. She forged documents to frame him. The partner was disbarred, went to prison, committed suicide 6 months later." Michael stood up so quickly his chair toppled backward. "No, you're lying." "I wish I was." Matthews pulled a file from his desk. "Here's the proof. The original documents, the evidence of her forgeries. I kept it all, telling myself it was protection in case she ever tried to deny my connection to you. But really, I was just a coward, unwilling to face what I'd helped cover up." I watched the color drain from Michael's face as he read through the file. As a prosecutor, he dealt with evidence of crimes every day. He knew authentic documents from forgeries. And these were real. "Dad's heart attack," he said numbly. "It wasn't just stress from work, was it?" Matthews looked away. George had finally figured it out. All of it. The embezzlement, the frame job, your true parentage. He confronted Patricia that morning. She claims he clutched his chest and collapsed before she could explain. But what? There was an empty bottle of heart medication in his desk. The prescription had just been filled the day before. The implications hung heavy in the air. Michael swayed slightly, and I guided him back to sit down. "She killed him," he whispered. "My mother killed my father." "It was never proven," Matthews said quietly. "The police ruled it natural causes. No autopsy was performed. But George's secretary later told me he'd been planning to go to the authorities that day. About everything." "And you kept this secret? For 20 years? Michael's voice rose. "You're a judge. You're supposed to uphold justice." "I know." Matthew's shoulders sat. By the time I learned the full truth, years had passed. The statute of limitations on the embezzlement had expired. There was no way to prove anything about George's death. And you were thriving. Top of your class in law school, following in George's footsteps. I told myself revealing the truth would only destroy your life. Like you destroyed that other man's life. The partner who went to prison? Matthews flinched. I didn't know about that part until later. Much later. Patricia was very good at hiding things. Until now. I spoke for the first time. Why is she running now? Because of this. Matthews pulled up a news article on his computer. Thomas Chin is returning from Hong Kong next week. George's brother. He never believed the embezzlement story, never stopped investigating, and he's finally found proof. Records of where the money went, evidence of the forgeries. He's planning to present it all to the firm's board of directors. Michael leaned forward to read the article. Thomas Chin, international finance expert, returning to take over leadership of the family law firm. The firm where Michael had been offered a partnership position just last month. She knew, Michael said. She knew Uncle Thomas would expose everything. That's why she gave us the house, disappeared to Florida. She's probably not even in Florida, is she? Matthews shook his head. She cleaned out her accounts last week. Bought a ticket to the Cayman Islands. No extradition treaty. I have to stop her. Michael pulled out his phone. Already tried, Matthews said. Her flight left 3 hours ago. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my new husband struggle to process the avalanche of revelations. His mother a thief, and possibly a murderer. His biological father a coward who helped cover it up. His whole life built on an elaborate framework of lies. What are you going to do? I asked softly. Michael stared at the file in his hands. Proof of his mother's crimes, of the innocent man she'd framed. Documents that could reopen old cases, restore a dead man's reputation, possibly even trigger a new investigation into George Chen's death. The right thing, he said finally. What Dad, what George, would have done. I'm taking this to the authorities. Matthews started to protest, but Michael cut him off. You don't get a say in this, either of you. You've done enough damage. We left Matthews' house as dawn was breaking, the file heavy in Michael's briefcase. He was quiet on the drive home, his face set in lines of determination I recognized from his toughest cases. You know this will change everything, I said gently. Your career, your position at the firm. I know, but I can't be part of covering up these lies anymore. He glanced at me. I understand if you want to. Don't you dare finish that sentence. I grabbed his hand. I married you yesterday, remember? For better or worse. This definitely qualifies as worse, but we'll face it together. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. I don't deserve you. Too bad. You're stuck with me. The next few weeks were a blur of investigators, depositions, and headlines. Michael turned everything over to the State Attorney General's office, recusing himself from any involvement due to conflict of interest. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just the documents from Matthews, but the diary from the attic, financial records Thomas Chin had uncovered, and eventually testimony from Matthews himself. Patricia was arrested trying to board a yacht in the Caymans. Apparently, her plan to escape hadn't been quite as foolproof as she'd thought. She refused to speak to Michael, sending only a brief note through her lawyer. I did it all for you. She still doesn't understand, Michael said, crumpling the note. Everything she did, all the lives she destroyed, it was never for me. It was all for herself. The partner she'd framed was posthumously exonerated. His family received a substantial settlement from the firm. Thomas Chin made sure of that. Judge Matthews resigned before he could be impeached, avoiding criminal charges in exchange for his testimony. Michael couldn't bring himself to forgive the man, but he understood the choice to cooperate. Sometimes justice requires hard compromises. As for us, well, we never did move into the Victorian house. Too many ghosts, too many lies embedded in those walls. We sold it and bought a small place of our own. somewhere we could build new memories untainted by the past. Michael left the firm, started his own practice specializing in financial crimes and wrongful convictions, using his knowledge of how corruption works to fight it instead of hiding from it. I've never been prouder of him. The diary that started it all still sits in a box in our closet. Sometimes I catch Michael staring at it, like he's trying to understand how his whole life could have been built on such an elaborate deception. "You know what I think?" I told him one night, about a year after everything happened. "I think George knew about you being Matthew's biological son. I mean, he had to have noticed the resemblance. But he chose to be your father anyway, chose to love you and raise you to believe in justice and truth. That's what made him your real father, not DNA, but choice." Michael was quiet for a long moment. "You really think so?" "I do. And I think he'd be proud of what you did. Of choosing truth over lies, justice over family loyalty. You're his son in all the ways that matter." Patricia was sentenced to 15 years for the embezzlement and fraud. The investigation into George's death was reopened, but there wasn't enough evidence to prove anything beyond reasonable doubt. Some mysteries remain unsolved. 2 years after our wedding day, we finally had the celebration we should have had then, a renewal of vows, surrounded by true family and friends. Thomas Chen stood in as Michael's best man. Matthews wasn't invited. As we exchanged rings again, I looked at my husband, this man who had faced the destruction of everything he thought he knew about himself and emerged stronger, more committed to truth and justice than ever. "For better or worse," I repeated, meaning it even more now than the first time. "For truth and justice," he added with a small smile. "And love," I finished. "Always love. Because in the end, that's what saves us, not the lies we tell to protect ourselves, but the truth we face together, and the love that helps us survive it." The Victorian house was eventually torn down, replaced by a community center that offers free legal aid to those who need it most. Michael volunteers there sometimes, helping people navigate the complex legal system that once helped hide his mother's crimes. Life has a way of coming full circle sometimes. Last week, we found out I'm pregnant. Sitting in the doctor's office, looking at the ultrasound, Michael squeezed my hand. "No secrets," he said quietly. "We tell them everything, age appropriate of course, but no lies." "No lies," I agreed. "Just love. Because that's the real legacy we want to pass on. Not money or property, or even a prestigious family name, but the simple, powerful truth that love combined with honesty is stronger than any convenient lie." The key Patricia gave us at our wedding sits in a frame on our wall now, not as a reminder of what we lost, but of what we found: the courage to face truth, the strength to choose justice, and the love that makes it all worthwhile. Sometimes the most valuable wedding gifts aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they come disguised as disasters, as revelations that shatter our world. But if we're brave enough to face them, to build something new from the ruins of what we thought we knew, they can lead us to exactly where we need to be. Michael keeps a picture of George on his desk, not because of biology or obligation, but because of choice. Because every day, he chooses to honor the man who taught him about justice and integrity, who loved him enough to keep loving him, even knowing the truth. That's the thing about family. Real family. It's not about blood, or DNA, or even shared history. It's about the choices we make every day, to love and support each other, to fight for what's right, to face hard truths together. The house key led us to truth. The truth led us to justice. And justice, somehow led us home. Not to a Victorian mansion full of secrets, but to each other and to the kind of love that's strong enough to survive any